Hello, everyone, and welcome into yet another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you all for tuning in today. Happy Halloween to all those who celebrate. Hope you have a happy, most importantly, safe Halloween night tonight. But if you are here to talk about fantasy sports, let's jump right into it because it should be a great show. We start off talking about some more general Week 9 prop bets. We previewed Thursday Night Football props yesterday, so I'm going to be focused on Sunday's slate of games as always. Then we look into the world of college football. Week 10 should be a good one. I'm going to give you a betting preview there. Then I'm going to be talking about some important injuries to monitor for Week 9 of your fantasy football season and what the potential fantasy implications could be in that regard. Then we're going to make my picks of the week and conclude with a Sunday Night Football betting preview between the Colts and my father's Minnesota Vikings. Shout out to my father if he is watching right now. But before we get into any of that good stuff and start the show, I do want to remind you that if you want to interact with the network exclusively, whether it be through short content or other podcasts around the network as well, consider liking, following, and subscribing to the show and the network as a whole. It is greatly appreciated by all concerned. Great way to support. But if you want to support more directly, especially with my show or other shows live streaming, you can make yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. You can do one of two things to interact with the show. You can either leave a burning question, comment, or concern throughout the show, and in any segment I will be able to read it out loud to my audience. But also, if you are so willing, you can press the $ in the comment section, leave a tip or donation as well. Anything you do is great. Interact with the network just makes this show and other shows around the network that much better. But without further ado, let us jump right into today's show here. Starting off, like I said, with a more generalistic view of Week 9 from a prop bets perspective. Now, all the prop bets that I've compiled really stem down to hype. Hype surrounding a certain player, hype surrounding a certain matchup, and most importantly, hype surrounding how you can approach the betting market week in, week out. Because there are so many different games and narratives to navigate when you are betting on games or players for that matter. And I really want to pinpoint. And Week 9's is probably the most diverse we're probably going to get all season with this prop bets list. I try to be as expansive as possible. I try to be as inclusive as possible. I try to be as diverse as possible. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Starting off with perhaps the most diverse pick I could have picked from any player, Jameis Winston, hitting the over in passing touchdowns. Who would have thought that I would be saying that phrase here in 2024 as Jameis Winston quarterbacks the Cleveland Browns after another Deshaun Watson season-ending injury. Now, the reason why Jameis Winston just looks so much more appealing from a betting perspective than anyone else in the Browns is because of his freewheeling spirit. We didn't get that with Deshaun Watson. We thought we were going to get the 2020 version of Deshaun Watson the instant he signed with the Browns. But to no avail, and now we are in the Jameis Winston era of the Cleveland Browns, hopefully seeing in him enough to hand the reins for potentially, after this season, a couple more seasons, should you know, in the draft, they feel like they could find a quarterback that they can develop. So it's going to be interesting to see how the contract situations play out here in Cleveland. But I think Jameis Winston, for the long run, is the best option the Browns have. Because, make no ands, ifs, or buts about it, there's no really exception to getting out of this Deshaun Watson contract. You really put yourself into a corner if you're the Cleveland Browns, in that you have restricted the ability to either offload the contract on someone else or just cut him and try and save as much cap space as possible. Either situation right now is not tenable for the future of the Cleveland Browns. So for the time being, ride the hype train with Jameis. And he's playing a Chargers team that, yes, has been fairly decent up to this point in the season, but hasn't really experienced a quarterback who is willing to throw the football downfield as much as Jameis wants to. And so, with the playbook now wide open versus Stefanski in this offense, look for Jameis Winston to continue to take shots in the field, continue to play brave yet reckless football, and find ways to put points on the board. At plus 143, this is a bet that you should be willing to take just because of the freedom we now see in the Browns offense. So look for that to be a shocking yet pretty intriguing prop bet to follow for this Sunday slate. Now going to a more chalk-like pick, so to speak, let's talk about Saquon Barkley. This is a guy who, when he's playing his best in this Eagles system, makes the Eagles one of the tougher teams to beat in the NFL. And check exactly who they're playing, but I do feel that each and every single time Saquon steps onto the field, he is going to put up points. They're playing the Jaguars. Now, yes, this could be seen as a matchups-oriented one, but let's be real here. In any situation, you would want a guy like Saquon Barkley in your parlay or general prop bets because of the fact that he's getting a lot of touches in the system and he's really helping this Eagles offense operate at a high level. So that's why I'm taking the over here at, I believe, 84.5 rush yards at minus 137. Look for him to truly continue making this Eagles offense a complicated one to crack. Because I can see how sometimes this offense can stagnate, but in games such as this, where the Eagles can be comfortable in how they run their offense, they're not going to be really tested at all. You're going to see the fruits of what Saquon Barkley can mean to this team. And not for nothing, they're going to have tough stretches this season. After this Jags game, they play 2 games in the division. They play one of the toughest NFC West teams in the Rams. They have the Ravens next, and they don't get much respite after as well, although they do conclude with 3 games in their division. So look for Saquon to have a strong reckoning in how this Eagles offense looks. And that's why I'm super hype about him from a betting perspective. Let's talk about the darker sides of the betting market in terms of certain players. Kind of a player who you're going to have to start selling. A player who, in real life, in fantasy, from a betting perspective, has looked unappealing ever since this whole Dolphins operation went off the rails. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill. Now, this Bills game certainly feels like one of those games where you could see the Bills letting their guard down and the Dolphins sticking around. But it certainly, now more than ever, feels too desperate of a situation for the Dolphins to really sway me in this one. Especially when it comes to Tyreek Hill. Because last week, yes, the hype around Tua coming back led them to a strong performance, perhaps one of their strongest performances since Tua's gone down. But still, they lost to a Cardinals team they should have presumptively beaten. And now they go on the road, I believe. I'm going to check that out real quick. On the road, I believe for now, to face a Bills team that's running away with the AFC East right now. So this feels like a game that, as they are on the road, that there's really no way to justify any sense of optimism in this Dolphins team in this one. Because last game, Tua, that was the game he got hurt, but he didn't look good before then. He was throwing picks. The Bills were happy to sit back in their zone coverage and, defend the spaces where Tyreek Hill makes his money. And so that's why I feel like I can't get too excited about the overs on Tyreek Hill bets. So that's why I'm taking the under in this one. 83.5 receiving yards at minus 137 as well. And then, in terms of the tight ends, this is a guy who's really coming into his own right now. And I think he's going to see his value in both fantasy and betting perspectives skyrocket for the rest of the season, and that is Trey McBride. For as long as the NFC West is as jumbled and jam-packed as it is right now, the Cardinals are a sneaky team to actually take this entire division, and Trey McBride could be the reason. Now, I feel like the best parts of the Cardinals' offense don't just involve Trey McBride. I do feel like the expansiveness of what Kyler as a dual-threat quarterback can bring and what Marvin Harrison now brings in the verticality of this offense really speaks to what this offense could look like. But Trey McBride is like kind of the safety blanket, the guy who holds everything together. The glue guy is the phrase I'm looking for. He can be the person who's the difference for this squad in this NFC West race. And in this game against the Bears, which is a very intriguing NFC matchup, look for him to challenge this young, rangy Bears secondary in ways that they haven't really seen before. So I'm taking the over here in 51.5 receiving yards at minus 137 to kind of hold down that tight end position because he's going to be doing it for the rest of the season. The final one before we go to break, Jared Goff hitting the under here. It seems like a popular one right now because even though you feel weird because it's the Lions and it's Goff and he's been efficient all season long, it might not even matter in terms of, the Lions winning this game. It just matters that Jared Goff hasn't, put up these gaudy numbers that people were expecting of him. And that's fine because the Lions have been winning. But it's just something to note in the betting market when, these over-unders come out. And this is a lofty total for him. 247.5 passing yards considering where he's sitting at in certain moments. I would definitely take the under here. Yes, it's a divisional matchup that you kind of expect them to win now, especially since Jordan Love is out, but it's still the toughest defense they faced. They're going to have to find ways to beat this team without, having to rely on Jared Goff. And they've done it before, so why not, continue to have this perspective hinge on the depth of the Lions and just go with the fact that the Lions are such a deep team that's not going to matter. So that's why I feel like Jared Goff, from here on out, you're going to have to monitor how lofty his numbers are in terms of prop bets because chances are he's always going to hit the under. But let me know what you think in the comments. I think all of these prop bets are versatile enough for you to get engaged no matter which team you want to bet on this weekend. But coming up right after this break, we take a little bit of a break from the NFL talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, college football, Week 10, giving you a betting preview on some of the biggest, most important games of the season, right after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me